right, let's check the mid-unit study guide for Unit 5. Number 1, a fish is 12 meters below the surface of the ocean. So that's represented with negative 12 because it's below. A seabird is 28 meters above. What is the difference in height between the fish and the seabird? Okay, so here's surface of the ocean, or sea level. We have 28 above, and we have negative 12, which is below. So we have to get down to sea level, and then down 12 more. So let's start with that. Starting with that 28, and I'm going to subtract that negative 12 because I'm finding the difference. All right, I have two signs here that become a plus. And then I can add like normal. 28 plus 12 is 40. So the difference between them is 40 meters. All right, number 2, the temperature was negative 9 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it rose, it went up by 25 degrees. What is the new temperature? So there's my reasoning, there's my expression. Now I'm going to use my adding rules. Different signs, subtract. And if you're doing it by hand, because you can't use a calculator, you have to borrow, keep the sign of the bigger number. And 25 has a bigger absolute value, right? And we only went down 9. We went in the positive direction way more, 25. So having a positive temperature makes sense. Wow, look, we're at number 4 already. Maybe because there's no number 3. Number 4, the temperature was 4 degrees, and then it dropped by 12 degrees. So that's subtraction, it's going down. What is the new temperature? There is my expression, and now I need to add the opposite because I'm subtracting more than what I have. Okay, maybe you thought about it as a number line. Maybe you drew a number line and you started at 4 and you jumped back 12 spaces. That's another way to show your reasoning. So if I'm using my adding rules, I have different signs, so I'm going to subtract. And then keep the sign of the bigger number. So 12 has a larger absolute value, right? I have more negatives here than I do positives. So because of that, my answer is negative. Okay, number 5, we're just doing some simple adding. You don't have to worry about words. Let's take a look at the first one. Negative 89 and 36. We have different signs, so we're going to subtract. Keep the sign of the bigger number. So 89 is the bigger number, and it's negative, negative 53. Next, we have 2 opposites. 2 opposites make 0. Letter C, we have 2 negatives, so same signs, add and keep, right? Because I have something that's negative, and then I'm going more in the negative direction. So to add these up, I'm going to make 186 a decimal so that I can line up those place values. It's really important. And negative 191 and 3/10. All right, next we're looking at some fractions here. So we have to remember that when we add fractions, we need to have the same denominator. So I'm going to rewrite it down here, but then before I do anything, I'm going to change my half to have a denominator of 4. So if I'm doubling my denominator, I'm going to double my numerator 2/4. So let's get rid of that. Here's my new fraction. I have the same denominator. Now I could use my adding rules. Different signs, subtract. 3 minus 2 is 1/4. Keep the sign of the bigger number. Well, having 3/4 is more than having 2/4. So it's negative. Last one, like we talked about in class, I like to add the ones with the same signs first. Because when I'm adding things with the same sign, I know they're going to stay negative, right? I have negative 2.3. I'm going farther in the negative direction. So I can add them like normal and keep that negative sign. Then I'm going to add it to 10.1. Well, adding a negative is the same as just subtracting. So really, I can take 10.1 off to the side and subtract 4.8 from it. Borrow, subtract, and 5.3 is our answer here. We had way more than we subtracted, so a positive answer. All right, flip it over. Next page, we have find each difference. So we are just doing some subtraction here. Two signs in the middle come together, make a plus sign. -3 plus 1. Different signs subtract to keep the sign of the bigger number. 3 has a larger absolute value. So as soon as I change it, I use my adding rules. So I'm going to change this one. Subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. Same signs, add, keep the sign. Letter C. Adding the opposite really just changes them both into plus signs. So -16 plus 4. Different signs subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. If I'm at -16 on the number line, I'm just moving forward towards the 0 4 places. So I'm still in the negative. Here's another one of those fraction questions where we need to make sure we have common denominators. Okay, I'm going to change my half to fourths. We already did that on the previous page. It's 2/4. And I can subtract. 2/4 minus 1/4 is 1/4. There was nothing to do with integers on that one. All right, last one. Subtracting is the same as adding the opposite. So look at, they both become plus signs, and I can add them as normal because it's just 2 decimals. So line up the tens place, and then 10.1 is our total. All right, some real world scenarios here. We have